Well, that escalated quickly. I didn't even really intend to come in here tonight to tell a story because, like so many others, I really am not a big fan of luck, one way or the other. I prefer to thank all the gods for everything all the time. But I was reminded of a story from when I had just been out of high school. I moved out of my parents' house about 8 days after graduation. And I had been planning this for several months. I had barely been staying there to begin with. And I met a girl, her name was Jen, and we had a great time. This was circa 1997, and after about a year and a half, I found myself working at the honey pot that is the Left Bank. If you've been to Left Bank, you would know it's a very nice establishment. If you've worked at the Left Bank, you would know it's a very, very nice establishment. There's Strand Nights, there's York Fair, there's all sorts of things. And whenever anyone famous comes to York, they generally eat at the Left Bank. So when I was working there, my roommate Jen had the privilege of waiting on a band that we really hadn't heard of before. But we were excited because, that meant that she got the big money that night. And it also meant that we got an invitation to do something that was totally outside of our comfort zone. Jen waited on the Kentucky Headhunters. They were at the fairgrounds doing a biker rally, I believe. And being from York, we are familiar with that kind of music, but it really wasn't our scene because we were rave rats at the time. Anyway, come close, they were getting ready to go do their show, and Jen gets the tip back, and they had a napkin on top of the checkbook. And she's like, "This is for you." She's like, "Thanks. It's a napkin." He's like, "No." And he grabbed her hand. And he's like, "This is for you." And she opened up the napkin, and inside was a very nice and very large joint. And she was like, "Wow, thank you. That's very kind." And and I'm helping her with the table, and we're talking to them, and they're like, "We would really like you girls to come to our concert at the fairgrounds tonight. Please come, we'll put you on the list, give us your full names, and, we'll get you backstage, you'll have a good time." And we're like, okay. You're the Kentucky Headhunters. If you're not familiar, they play kind of rednecky, southern rock and roll, hillbilly type of music. Good old country rock and roll. So we thought, well, we went back and forth. Maybe we shouldn't, maybe we shouldn't. Jen's like, "Well, they left us like $150 on this check and a joint." So we go home and change, and we're like, "Should we, shouldn't we? Maybe, we'll go." And we're like, fuck it. Like, let's smoke this joint and drink this beer, and then we're going to go over to the Kentucky Headhunters concert at the York Fair. Woo! So we get there, and we go to, the ticket. They're like, "Oh, do you have tickets?" Like, "No." And we explain the whole situation, waiting on the band. They said they put us on the list, and they're like, "You're not on the list." And they're, checking the list. And I'm like, "Are you sure?" They're like, "No, you're not on the list." I'm not even sure how we did it, and even why we did it. But we somehow managed to talk ourselves into the Kentucky Headhunters concert at the York Fairgrounds during a bike rally. So we get in, and we get up front, and we're like, "Oh, yeah, okay, we're rocking out, this is great." And the concert ends, and we walk around to where they're letting the people to backstage, and somehow, again, I'm not even sure why or how, but we talked ourselves backstage. We get backstage for the Kentucky Headhunters. I cannot even tell you any of their names or their songs that they sing. I just don't know. But when you're 22 and, you're having a good time, it doesn't even matter. So we get backstage, and they're like, hey, yeah, thanks for coming. Oh, my God, how'd you guys get in? And we're like, well, you totally forgot to put us on the list. But here we are. And they're like, oh, great. Okay, so let's go back to our tour bus. And so we go back to the tour bus, and we're hanging out with these guys, and we're drinking our Budweisers. And they're like, let's smoke some weed. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. That sounds good. And so they're like having a good time. And they're like, we got this weed from Willie Nelson. And we're like, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like, yeah, we were hanging out with him last week in LA, and he gave us this. And I'm like, you guys are awesome. And they were totally cool dudes, and they were 70% not skeevy. And like, they tried to get us to stay on the tour bus and hang out, but we just decided that, we were just gonna smoke their weed and drink their Budweiser and go home, which is pretty much what we did. And that's how I was lucky enough to meet the Kentucky Headhunters and smoke some weed from Willie Nelson. Thank you.